You are now watching Demeech.
The saga of the Nintendo Switch 2 continues. This entire year, forget that Nintendo released Princess Peach Showtime. The real concern was the Switch 2, which formerly was just an imaginary console. There was nothing official about it, it was just speculation, because, yeah, Nintendo released the Nintendo Switch all the way back in 2017. So eventually, they gotta release a new console, and that is pretty much what Nintendo YouTube was focusing on. Just the Switch 2, even though there was zero confirmation about its existence. And I always thought, yeah, with the Switch 2, it's not happening until Nintendo says that it's happening. But finally, the day has finally come. We have the first important information in the Nintendo Switch 2 saga, and it also could change the course on who has to eat Billy Dogs, and it's looking like it's going to be you.
Tell me.
Hey, if that doesn't happen, the Billy Dogs might just do it. Nah, I'm kidding. Worst comes to worst, you eat something that's absolutely disgusting. It's Vienna sausages, Twinkies, and mayo. And you even got the ingredients to make them. Yeah, but I think you threw them out.
Yeah. Because I'm gonna use some higher quality ingredients.
You have to use Vienna sausages, mayo, and Twinkies to make Billy Dogs because it looks like you are losing the bet. But yeah.
Yeah.
Today,
I think I am.
As of May 7th, 2024, Nintendo officially confirmed that a successor for the Nintendo Switch will be announced before March 2025. So essentially what they said is that the successor will be announced within the next fiscal year, or this fiscal year, which means they have until the end of March 2025 to reveal it. So,
well,
what
I
they
mean,
could do,
we got the name Nintendo Switch Successor. What a great name!
I thought it was going to be called New Nintendo Switch U. But
that would have been good too.
No, but in all seriousness, they actually revealed that it's happening. And when it's revealed, we're not sure. Nintendo could do something where they reveal it in March of 2025 and then release it 2 years later. But just the whole marketing space has completely changed. It's not like they can announce a console like years in advance now. They'd probably want to reveal it sooner to its release, and I'm thinking that what's likely going to happen with this new system is that it's going to probably be revealed in October or the fall of this year, and then release early next year. I'm thinking March.
Yeah, so I have a few months to eat the Billy Dogs.
Hey, you don't have to eat the Billy Dogs until the end, or until the Switch 2 is actually released. Nintendo also... Hey, knowing Nintendo...
I'm not gonna eat it the day of. That's crazy. I want to enjoy my time with the Switch 2.
Well, the thing is, if we wait until it's actually released, Nintendo could actually release the Switch 2 this year. They could announce it in July, and then it could release for the Christmas season. But knowing Nintendo, it's looking like a fall reveal and March of next year release is more likely.
Yeah, and you know what? I've accepted that I lost. So, you know, I will commence the Billy Dog stuff. But also, you know, I am curious to see what's going to happen for the rest of the year, because we're going to discuss this in a separate discussion, but we do have one final Nintendo Switch Direct in June, kind of reminiscent of the final 3DS Direct in 2016.
You know, I was actually thinking about that. They did that back in September, but I'm not sure whether it's going to be the final Nintendo Switch Direct or not, because they said, yeah, there's going to be a successor announcement, but they never said, oh, this is going to be the final Direct.
Well, I don't see them announcing any more first-party games for the Switch, because I feel like, and we'll discuss this in the other discussion, but I feel like it's just going to be a lot of ports and remasters and smaller titles. But, that being said, enough about Billy Dogs and June Directs. Let's talk about the actual console itself. Now, you and I have had discussions about this for, I want to say, years now. I am kind of sick of my Nintendo Switch. I've had the original for 7 years now. I've been wanting an upgrade for a long time. Nintendo's done a great job with utilizing their hardware for their software, but it's time that they get with the program and we get some stuff that's next gen. You know, the standard is 4K. I'm not expecting them to do actual 4K, but I expect at the very least with Nintendo that we get better performances out of games. Games should be, for the most part, running at 60 frames per second. And it's just not happening with the Switch anymore. I mean, look at Peach Showtime. That's woof. But with that being said, what are your hopes and dreams for the Switch 2? What do you want to see from it? What new gimmicks do you want to see from it, if at all?
Well, with the Switch 2 specifically, I know why a lot of people want the system, and I feel like we're getting at a point where, yeah, the Switch hardware is really old at this point, but like I always say, I feel like it all comes down to optimization. Princess Peach Showtime just wasn't optimized well. I'm sure if it was handed over to another developer, they could have got it looking better and running better on the Switch. But that's beyond the point. With this new successor, we don't know what it's called yet. It could be called the Nintendo Switch 2, or it could be called the new Nintendo Switch U Deluxe. We don't know yet, but what we do know is that apparently it is an actual successor to the Nintendo Switch. So it'll be another Switch system. And I'm hoping for that because with the Switch, it introduced the idea of being a console handheld hybrid. And it's one of the best gimmicks Nintendo's ever come up with. Being able to take your games wherever you want, being able to play console games on the go, that is a great idea. You never have to stop gaming, and anything that would not have that going forward would feel like a major step back. With something like the 3D on the 3DS, I really enjoy it, but if a system doesn't have the 3D, not a huge deal, but if you're losing that hybrid aspect, yeah, that is a huge disappointment. But I don't think the successor will lose the hybrid aspect. I think it's going to be very similar to the Switch. Now, in terms of what I want to see from it and what I expect, I'm expecting it to be just like the Switch, but more powerful, with better controllers. Probably won't drift this time around. I'm hoping that they'll have a D-pad. If not, I could always mod the new Joy-Cons to have a D-pad, but I don't know why they wouldn't. It doesn't seem like people would utilize using the Joy-Con sideways over a D-pad. A D-pad's way more practical. I just want it to be more powerful, and I feel like nowadays... See, back in 2017, 4K wasn't really that important because 4K TVs weren't the norm yet. But nowadays, you can literally get a gigantic 4K TV for under $300. So it's become the standard.
Yeah.
And anything below it, it doesn't make sense. The last time we had a technological leap for a Nintendo console was the Wii U. That was like HD for the first time. And that was back in 2012. Whereas a Switch is like a more powerful Wii U.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. I would say like Nintendo needs to future-proof this console. So I think 4K is the way to go, whether they're using DLSS or not to achieve that, whatever. But they need to be able to compete with the competition now because, consoles are becoming stagnant in what they could do. Like, most consoles, perform at 4K 30 frames or, 1080p 60 frames. Like, I don't see them going above that anytime soon. So I think Nintendo needs to step up their game with that a little bit, uh, especially since they're not changing the form factor. And to be honest with you, I don't really see them adding any new crazy gimmicks. Like, I could see them adding, like, I don't know, like, let's say a touchpad on one of the Joy-Cons, or like an extra button or something, or like a stylus, but I don't see them adding anything crazy. I think maybe the gimmick with this one will be that you can switch in different ways. You know how, like, okay, one of the big selling points with the original Switch was tabletop mode, handheld mode, and docked mode.
Yeah,
Perhaps there's different ways to switch with this system. I mean, I'm going to get into a little bit of speculative territory here, but there were rumors that these new Joy-Cons may be magnetic. Like, what if you can attach them to the top and the bottom of the console for some sort of different use? I'm just speculating here, but perhaps it's something that we're not even thinking about. But in my opinion, I don't think they need to change much. I think honestly, they just need to do an iterative update. And I think that's what we're getting. I think we're getting a more powerful Switch with quality of life features, some new bells and whistles, but for the most part, it's going to be what most people are wanting out of a new Switch, which is great because honestly, we just want some more ambitious titles that, you know, their console could handle because the Switch, I don't know, like it barely runs Tears of the Kingdom okay. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, some games struggle with it. Honestly, I feel like most first party Nintendo games do just fine. Sure, they could look and run better, which is something I'd like to see with the Switch too. I am wondering though, you think it's going to be backwards compatible and will enhance games? Because with the Game Boy Color, if you put in an original Game Boy game, it would get some color to it. Not a lot, but certain games had specific color palettes, so they'd go from just a standard monochrome to having a little bit of enhancement. And
Absolutely.
there,
Yeah,
there were also the games made for the Game Boy Color and the original Game Boy, the black cartridges,
right.
where you could use them on
I
either system. If you use it on the original Game Boy, it just worked like a regular Game Boy game. But on the Game Boy Color, you get full on color. So essentially like cross-gen games. But I'm talking like,
yeah,
could you see games like Pikmin 4 getting enhanced to be like at 60 frames per second? Or, maybe Peach Showtime at 1080p and 60
right.
frames per second. You think they're gonna enhance regular Switch games? Because that would be great.
I think so. And I think it's just going to be first party games. I don't think well, it depends, right? I think maybe some third party games might get enhanced, but it depends on the developers. But I think for the most part, Nintendo's major first party titles will have enhanced patches, I think day one, to get the Switch crowd to migrate over to the Switch too. And I think they would be stupid not to have backwards compatibility, digital and physical, because let's be honest, the Switch is going to become the best selling system of all time by the end of the year. It's almost beaten out the PlayStation 2. So, to have that large of a player base and to leave them in the dust with their games on a dead console doesn't really seem logical to me. I think what makes sense is to make it backwards compatible, switch over all your Switch Online stuff to the Switch 2 to make it an easy migration. Not everyone's going to migrate right away, but the hope is by the time the holiday season rolls around, we'll have enough first party titles to make people go like, "Okay, well, I can only play these games on the Switch too, but all my save data on my original Switch I can migrate over to this Switch too, and I don't have to get rid of any of my games." So it's a win-win in my book. I think it's a no-brainer, and I do think like we're gonna see enhanced updates to games like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. I'm even thinking maybe we'll get like some form of re-releases for some titles. I don't
I
think
don't
for
want to
all.
think about
I,
that. Mario Kart 8
I
Deluxe Deluxe?
no, not in that regard, but more so in the regard of, well, I don't know. I was thinking more in the regard of like cross-gen kind of re-releasing, but now that I think about it, that doesn't really make sense because you'll have Mario Kart 9 and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. That doesn't really make sense. So disregard what I just said. But Backwards compatibility and enhanced modes for first-party Nintendo games at the very least, I can 100% see happening. Um, but yeah,
Now, here's the
um,
thing. When it comes to
mhm,
backwards compatibility, if anything, Nintendo kind of confirmed it because they said they wanted to make the transition from the Switch to their next console to be as seamless as possible. So I'm assuming that it's going to be backwards compatible. And considering the
yeah,
Switch is going to be the best selling game console of all time, I mean, why wouldn't it be backwards compatible? And why wouldn't it be a direct successor to the Nintendo Switch? Unless Nintendo wanted to do something really crazy, then I honestly couldn't see them trying to reinvent the wheel with the next console. I think,
I honestly just can't see them going too far outside of what they already have. I think it's just going to be a powerful Switch that has some new bells and whistles, a little bit more ergonomic, and some more quality of life changes. I think that's what we're going to get. It's going to be simple, straight to the point. But that leads me to my question for you. Is that going to be enough to grasp the casual audience? Because you and I think, obviously, we hear a more powerful Switch, obviously we're going to get it. But for the casual audience, do we need something that's going to stick out for this Switch 2 for them to buy it? Or do you think advertising the Switch 2 as something that's a more powerful Switch will sell regardless? Because it's kind of a hard sell. We're assuming the console's going to sell for about $400, which is steep for some people. So, do you think it's enough to just say, "Oh, it's a more powerful Switch," will be enough for
well,
consumers?
I feel like yes, it would be. And one thing I wanted to bring up before getting into that is with backwards compatibility, with Nintendo consoles that have had it before, oftentimes the games weren't enhanced. Like if you play a Wii game on the Wii U, it's not upscaled to HD. It uses
Right.
component which looks better, but it's not the same as like being upscaled to HD. But I feel like with today's market and how the Xbox Series X with the backwards compatibility, how it
Yep.
upscales games, I think it
Yep.
could do the same for select Nintendo Switch games. Though I do think it's going to
Yep.
have like full backwards compatibility, which would be great. I don't want to give
Yeah.
up the library of Switch games. It is absolutely massive. And yeah, not having backwards compatibility would just be such a dumb move.
It would also be great for the consumer because now they don't have an excuse to port over the same games again.
Ah, that's nice. That's exactly what I want. Yeah, the beginning of the Switch's life, it was literally mostly Wii U ports for the first
And
4 years.
now they don't have to rely on that. So that's why I'm so excited because I think this is the first generation in a long time that I think we're going to see new games from existing franchises, like actual new games and not remakes. I think like we'll see remakes here and there, but we're going to see I can't guarantee what we're going to see, but I think for sure we'll see a new 3D Mario, like maybe Donkey Kong. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but it's a bit more exciting compared to the first year of the Switch, where it was kind of a lot of remakes and ports. Let's be honest.
Oh, that was like 2018, where that year was pretty much nothing but Wii U ports and Smash. But I will say,
Yeah,
you could absolutely sell a more powerful Switch as a successor and it'll still do well. Like with the Game Boy Color, I do see that as more of a successor than an iteration, if you know what I mean. Because it had its own
yeah,
library games and stuff. I feel
that's
like, yeah,
true.
you don't have
You
to do
know,
something insane or like completely different, like going from the GameCube to the Wii or the Game Boy Advance to the Nintendo DS. Because if you look at something like the Game Boy Advance compared to the original Game Boy, it's more powerful. Form factor, depending on which one you use, is different. Whether it's the folding Game Boy Advance SP or just a regular Game Boy Advance, or my personal
right?
favorite, the Game Boy Micro. It's
You
like the
know,
same general concept, but more powerful.
Speaking of naming conventions, it's funny because I feel like the Switch is going to be Nintendo's new Game Boy, where they're going to, not that they're going to keep milking it, but we're going to have different iterations of this thing for a long time. Um, probably for the foreseeable future. But what I wanted to ask was about the naming convention. I think that's really important in their marketing push. You and I both know Nintendo. They don't like numbering their consoles. That's more of a PlayStation thing. Switch 2 is more of like a code name that we're calling it right now, just to be easy on ourselves.
Well, here's the
But
thing.
yeah,
I feel like Nintendo nowadays has changed quite a bit. Their current president, who, I've spoken about how I'm not a fan of a lot of his business moves, Furukawa, he's definitely
yeah.
more focused on the business end, and I do think that there is a possibility where they just call it the Nintendo Switch 2.
Oh, really? So you think there is a possibility of them calling it Switch 2?
Yeah, I feel like what a lot
Interesting.
of Nintendo does nowadays is like completely different. They can still be creative, but they tend to do things that make a little more sense, if you know what I mean. Like,
I get
for
what you mean.
example, remaking Super Mario RPG and Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door. Excellent remakes, exactly what fans wanted too. But, just even a few years ago, you wouldn't ever predict them doing something like that.
That's true. I think Switch 2 is the safest thing that they can name it, but I don't know. Like, knowing Nintendo for so many years, I feel like they're going to call it Nintendo Switch something. And I'm kind of scared about that because, you know, the casual consumer might not know what it is. It could be a Wii U situation again, which I'm scared about. So I think the name of this thing is going to be really, really important. And I think even before they announce what it's going to be called, I think we're going to find out what it's going to be called because I'm pretty sure manufacturing's going to start this summer.
Hey, we might even see what the console's gonna look like. We saw that with the Switch Lite. We saw the shell for that before
That's
it
true.
released, but yeah, no, in terms of naming the console, the Wii U is probably still fresh in Nintendo's mind. Like, what happened with the Wii U? It was the name of the console that was confusing, but also the reveal. Like, if you look at that original trailer from E3 2011, it just talks about the new controller, and it just says the new controller a bunch of times, making it seem more like
Right.
a peripheral for the Wii. And also,
Right.
there were just so many different factors. Social media also wasn't as prevalent, so Nintendo,
That's true too.
yeah, they couldn't convey what message they were trying to send. Like, this is a new console, this is the successor to the Wii, not a peripheral for it. And also, the games they showed off were essentially like Wii games. They showed off a variation of Wii Sports, which ended up being Wii Sports Club, New Super Mario Bros. Me, which evolved into New Super Mario Bros. U. But like I always say, a console is nothing without its games, and that is going to be the main factor on what sells the Nintendo Switch 2. Because with the Wii U, going back to that, yeah, the name certainly didn't help. It did cause a lot of confusion. But if you look at a lot of the games, they had counterparts on the Wii or the 3DS. So for most casual consumers are like, why would I want to get a system for $300 to play games I could play on the 2DS, which is much cheaper? Or I already have those on the Wii.
Right. Now, I did want to go back to a question. Do you think? Okay, well, if you had to choose one big gimmick that this console will have, besides it being 4K and it runs like better and better load times and whatever, what do you think that'll be?
I would say something that'd be kind of cool is like a wireless dock mode, where you can actually
Hmm.
cast directly from the Switch 2 itself. It could also work as a gamepad.
Oh,
Like
interesting.
you could use
That's
it
an
like
interesting idea.
a Chromecast or Roku device where you're able to scan it. Input lag's the only thing I would be concerned about, but knowing Nintendo and the research and development, they'd probably find a way around it. So that would be really convenient. If they
Wow,
actually
that's
make it work, then it could just replace the dock entirely.
well. Then we just have the Wii U again.
See, the thing with the Wii U is that it was actually a console you couldn't take with you. But let's say you're going to a hotel or something. You could actually bring the Switch 2 with you and cast it to the TV. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Oh,
One gimmick
interesting.
I certainly do not want to see return are dual screens. And I know I was talking about like the whole thing where it's kind of like the Wii U with the casting to your TV. But what I mean by dual screens is something like the Wii U or the DS, where a lot of games focused on having two screens. Because more often than not, for every Super Mario Maker that you had a game that utilized two screens horribly. Something like Yoshi's Island DS or Star Fox Zero. And I don't want to see games like that on the next console. I really like that Nintendo's just focused on, making games that are tailored towards a mostly standard gaming experience. Sure, you have stuff that use motion controls like WarioWare Move It, and there are some experimental type games like Labo, but it's still very traditional, which I honestly prefer. I do like motion controls, but stuff like the gamepad, dual screens, I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see, what else can we talk about? I guess we could talk about the Joy-Cons. Man, where do we begin? I think the Joy-Cons are probably some of the worst controllers Nintendo has ever made.
I mean, I like the Joy-Cons.
Conceptually, they're really cool, but in execution, they drift, they're tiny, they make my hands cramp, they're not very ergonomic, they're just not as well fleshed out as they could be. There should be Hall effect joysticks. They should be a little wider and a little bit more ergonomic, And I think, there should be a D-pad. I understand. I think the problem with the D-pad is that when you're playing with a singular Joy-Con, it's hard to tell for, like, let's say a casual, like, which button is down, left, right, and up. So they might need to find a way to, like, figure that out, but I don't know. I think they could figure it out.
Well, what they could do is they could have an accessory where it's like the 4 buttons are recessed in, where you can put a D-pad over it that just clicks into place. So you could switch from that. Although I feel like it'd be another one of those things that ends up missing when the console's sold used. Like the expansion pack cover for the Nintendo 64, the stylus for the DS. But, the stylus was an integral part to the DS, so having like a removable part makes sense. And it would help a lot.
I wonder if there could be like some mechanic that you could click in to turn it into like 4 buttons, and then if you click it back out, it turns into a D-pad. I don't know how to describe it, but
this isn't the same thing. But when I was a kid, I had a handheld called the V-Smile, which is an educational system, and it had a feature where you could reverse the layout of the controller and the button. So what you could do is you could flip a switch on the back, and you could have the D-pad go to the right instead the left, and then have the button go on the other side as well. So they could do something like that, where it's like a rotating thing. But
yeah, that could actually, maybe that could work, but then you'd have the issue of like the other person would have a D-pad. So, but I see where you're getting at.
No,
but,
you could actually just reverse the controller to have the D-pad just become the buttons.
Oh, I see what you mean. But yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else that I'm missing from this.
Well, what's the most important part of a console?
Well, the games.
The games and also the features. Now, I will say the Nintendo Switch specifically lacks a lot of features that were pretty standard on consoles up until the Switch. Things like themes. It doesn't have much personality. I would like to see that, but the thing I want most to return is Street Pass, or an equivalent to it.
Oh, Street Pass would be great.
Because I just got back from PAX East, and it was all about Street Pass. And Uncle Nick, if you're watching this, we want Street Pass to return on the Switch too. And honestly, considering how much the Switch sold, I feel like incorporating Street Pass on the next console, or successor to it, would just be a great idea. It's a real shame it's not on the Nintendo Switch, because it's one of the best things about the 3DS. So they could have something like it where you could get features in games, has mini games, puzzles to unlock. Essentially, just like on the 3DS.
speaking of that, one of the things that I really miss from the 3DS and Wii U era is like when you're about to click on a game on the 3DS and it does like a little intro, or like when you click on a Wii U game, it does a little intro.
Yeah, I mean, for the
Yeah,
Wii
I
U, not
miss
as
that. I
much,
would
but the
love.
3DS, I'd love to see that
Well,
return.
for the Wii U, they had the Donkey Kong little intro for Tropical Freeze, which was great. Um, but yeah, mostly I'm talking about the 3DS where they had these like little cute intros. Like the best part of New Super Mario Brothers 2 was that intro when Mario's like, "New Super Mario Brothers 2."
Well, that was actually a
Um,
thing on the Wii. They're called splash screens. So when you start up a game,
yeah,
that would be awesome to see return. Could you
I
imagine
would
if there was
love to
one for
see that.
Super Mario Brothers Wonder where you start it up and
Oh, that
it
would be.
just says, or has the Wonder Flower and says, "All right."
No, but honestly, I think what we're missing is like personality from like the main menu. We're missing folders. We're missing
Well, we have the
splash
folders
screens.
now, but they're not as intuitive as they were
They're
on the
not.
3DS.
You know what I mean? Like real folders. I don't know. We're missing a lot of features. Like honestly, I would even have like a Miiverse equivalent come back. Oh, speaking of online, we got to talk about this. What do you think is going to happen with their online service? I see Switch Online being moved over to Switch 2, and I see them introducing a third tier. Now, what that'll entail, my guess, I don't know how you're going to feel about this. It's going to be GameCube games.
Yeah, here's the thing.
Thoughts?
They're remaking and re-releasing so many GameCube games. I don't know why they just put them on the online service.
But what else would be a bigger draw to get people to get their third tier? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Also, do you think they'll make strides to improve their online? Not so much like their service, but what I'm talking about is like for games like say Smash Brothers or like, voice chat, like native voice chat in the Switch itself. And not having to use friend codes. Do you think Nintendo will finally move away from that and start doing what the competitors are doing pretty well, which is online gaming?
I hope so. What's weird is that they brought friend codes back despite them not being on the Wii U. So with online and Nintendo, you never know what they're gonna do. For usually the worst, because
Yeah,
they didn't invent or develop the introduction of online gaming. They feel like they need to reinvent the wheel. So it's very weird with
unfortunately.
Nintendo, but like I said, under Furukawa, they're under different leadership. For better or for worse, a
So
lot of times, but oftentimes it just leads Nintendo to being a little more predictable. And in
do
case
you
of
think
online, here's what
right?
I could see them doing. I couldn't see them bringing GameCube games as an incentive, but I do see them doing a sort of thing like Game Pass, where you could actually have a selection of Switch games to play, sort of like a Game Pass thing.
Well, if anything's to judge by Microsoft nowadays, I don't think that's a good idea anymore. But um I see what you're getting at. I see what you're getting at.
I mean, it's a good
I think
idea. Microsoft just sucks.
Yeah, I think Switch Online has a lot of work to go. It would be nice if like I told you this idea before, but like it would be cool if like you had the option to actually buy like a game within like let's say the NES store. Like let's say you want to have Super Mario Brothers 3 and you don't really care for like the Switch Online service and you just want to have it on your console. You could buy it for like let's say $5.
Can I borrow
Uh,
five
as
bucks?
besides like the Switch Online stuff. Like I think that would be a cool thing to have. I think we're just missing a lot of virtual. I think we're missing the virtual console, to be honest. Like I think Switch Online for what it is right now, it's decent, but
I have some
uh,
choice words to say about it. I think that the
I
Game
think
Boy
I
and Game Boy Advance lineup that they have is pathetic. There's barely
oh
anything
that's
there.
pathetic. I think the N64 lineup could be better too. Actually, you know what? I take that back. It's not decent. It's still pretty bad. It's still really bad, actually. There's a lot of games missing. Where's Donkey Kong 64?
Where's Donkey Kong
Like,
94?
there's a lot of games that are. I don't know. Like, I don't. Do you think they're gonna like? Do you think they're going to have Virtual Console alongside the subscription-based service?
I really hope so. It was one of the best features of Nintendo consoles before because, like I brought up before, if it wasn't for the Virtual Console, I wouldn't have experienced all those classic Nintendo games as early as I did because I grew up playing the Wii and I was able to play all the original Super Mario Brothers games, and then Super Mario World, then Super Mario 64, and even GameCube because it was backwards compatible. It was great. So not having it on the
Right.
Switch was always a disappointment. And the online service, yeah, for every Banjo-Kazooie you get a Kablooie. Usually a dozen Kablooies before you get something like that. But yeah, it's just like, I'd love to see it return. I feel like online could be better, but that's because the online on the Nintendo Switch is so low. It's not the bottom of the barrel, it's the middle of the earth. That's how bad the online is.
I'm amazed that Mario Kart runs the way it does, because any other game, the online is trash.
Well, most games, yeah. It really just depends on what you're playing. But I would say
Yeah.
that online, it's like with Nintendo, I have no expectations. But what I do have expectations for are the games that will launch with the successor to the Nintendo Switch. I feel like at this point, it'd be a no-brainer to release either a new 3D Mario or a new Mario Kart alongside it. I feel like it would probably be a new Mario Kart first.
Really? I think that's a hard. See, because like you could launch the system with either game, and it'll sell a million. It'll like sell millions. So I'm gonna say 3D Mario is gonna launch with the Switch 2. I
Well,
think it's time. I think Mario Kart is gonna release a little closer to the holiday season to incentivize the majority of people to buy it. I just think 3D Mario. This is the longest we've gone without a 3D Mario since 64 to Sunshine. Did you know that? The longest we've gone without it. I don't know what they're cooking at EPD, but there's rumors of an open world 3D Mario game. I don't know if that's true. I don't know how the hell they'll do that, but I'm pretty sure at this point it's not Odyssey 2, and that excites me because I don't know what it's gonna be.
I don't think it's going to be Odyssey 2 either. I feel like with Super Mario Odyssey 2, that would have happened by now. But knowing
Oh
Nintendo,
yeah.
they could always do something like, in the June Direct, we have one final announcement, and then it shows Cappy and it's Super Mario Odyssey 2. But I'm sure they'd want to save like the big games for their next console in order to sell it. I feel like Mario Kart would be a better launch title though, because Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is the best-selling Nintendo Switch game, and that released in late April of 2017. And it consistently sells incredibly well. I do think the gap between Mario Kart 8 and, yeah, the whatever Mario Kart 9 is
feel-
going to be, and before I get the comments, ooh, but Tours 9, that doesn't matter. We could include the arcade games, we could include Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, you know what I mean.
Well, I think to me it makes more sense to release Mario Kart 9 or 10 or whatever it's going to be called a little bit closer to the holiday season. Honestly, I don't care like when it comes out cuz I know like within the year 2025 we're going to be playing all these games anyways. I think for sure at launch we're going to get a new 3D Mario. The only reason I say 3D Mario is cuz like it'll be the first time a 3D Mario game launches with a Nintendo system since the Nintendo 64. And Mario always sells. Mario Kart always sells too, but I don't think. When was the last time Mario Kart sold as a launch title?
I don't think it ever was a launch title.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if they would change that now. I get where you're coming from,
But here's the
but
thing.
yeah,
As a wise blue Muppet once said, something that hasn't been done until it was done, which means that, yeah, it could very well be a launch title. And with 8 Deluxe, you could technically kind of consider it that. What, it released a little over a month after the Switch launched? It was like 2 months, which is like nothing in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
I'm just ready to move on from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and just Mario Kart 8 in general.
Oh, I'm ready for it too. Like I every time you ask me to play Mario Kart 8, I'm just like, ugh, I don't want to play this anymore.
He wants to play some crappy Sonic game instead.
Yeah, no. Sonic, that's a discussion for another day. But with that being said, I think we could both agree that something Mario related will be at launch with the Switch 2. Any other guesses? Maybe I was gonna say Animal Crossing, but maybe not in the first year of the Switch 2.
I mean, considering that it's been like almost 5 years, they definitely could do it. That'd be a smart decision. It's the second best-selling game.
But then you have to consider that the same development team makes Splatoon games, and didn't they just finish the DLC?
Yeah, they did. So maybe that'd be a little later on. I guess with the launch lineup for the Nintendo Switch 2, it's very important, but if there's backwards compatibility and the games are enhanced, you're at least not going to get as bored as with the original Switch, where that had no backwards compatibility, and you just had to wait for the entire library to release throughout the years.
I think that's why it's so important for this system to have personality in terms of like a street pass or like a find me or like just little apps that make it stand out from the original Switch that were missing from the 3DS and Wii U era. I think it'll make people go like, "Wow, this is fun." You know, I don't know. Like, I think they could do it. I'd love to see
Flipnote Studio return, although I'm not sure if that's a feature. Miiverse, like you said before, that'd be kind of cool too. Although it's really just Street Pass and Flipnote Studio I really want to see back. Street Pass, I feel like that has more of a likelihood.
Yeah, I don't see Flipnote ever returning, unfortunately, but that would be awesome. But I don't know, I'm trying to think of anything else that we haven't like discussed yet. Is there anything else you would like to add to this discussion?
Absolutely. In the meantime, before the Switch 2 releases, we have quite a few great games coming to the original Switch. So go out there, get Mario vs. Donkey Kong, get Princess Peach Showtime. Of course, you have to get Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. That is Game of the Century. And yeah, we also got Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, and I'm even enjoying Endless Ocean Luminous to an extent. But in the meantime, T&D, I hope you prepare your stomach, because you're going to have to be eating Billy Dogs.
Yeah.
So, you better raise that white mayonnaise-tinted flag. Well, anyways, guys, that about wraps it up. I'm Demeech.
I'm C&D.
And enjoy your Billy Dogs.
Can I borrow $5?